Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to Healing Myself, the podcast. I'm Scott Hayes, a licensed clinical social worker.
And I'm Shatay Hayes, producer and certified business and mindset coach.
You've just tuned in to Our Revolution. We're on a mission to help our community find freedom from the inside out. So we host conversations about God, therapy, and all the lessons we've learned about how to love, trust, forgive, and affirm ourselves first.
We used to talk about the hard parts of life. Now we talk about the healed parts because that's where true freedom resides. Join us and you'll see that when you save yourself first, you transform your life and you lead the way for those around you to save themselves too. Okay, welcome back, y'all. Today we are so excited to have a very special guest joining us for an incredible conversation. We have Dr. Cicely Brathwaite, who is a psychologist and an integrative coach. She's an author of several books, including the one we're talking about today, Self-Care Activities for Women, 101 Practical Ways to Slow Down and Reconnect with Yourself. I'm so excited to talk about this book. She's also my soror. And we also just went through a very gruesome, exhausting certification program together last year. So I'm excited to be connecting beyond that and learning and talking more about her work. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Scott and Shatay. It's great to see you. And hey, soror.
Hey, soror.
Listen, y'all not going to leave me out. We got a little PNG connection here.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm the bruz. So
Oh, all right.
So welcome, Dr. Cicely. I'm excited to have another mental health professional on with us. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, so excited about the work that you're doing. Can't wait to talk a little bit more about it. Just thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
We're so happy to have you.
Oh, I'm delighted, really delighted to be here with the two of you and to see where this conversation goes. And I just really enjoy the energy that the two of you exude. And looking forward to seeing what we create together for this conversation.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Well, we ain't gonna delay.
Yeah.
We're gonna jump right into this thing. So tell us about the work that you do.
Yeah. Sure. So I have been a psychologist for 20 years. And throughout the time that I have been a clinician, so the years before I got my doctorate, I have really been passionate about how to support people, most often Black folks, find ways to excavate and release the societal constraints that impact our health and well-being and our relationships by helping folks to deepen their relationship with themselves and their understanding of themselves, and to be able to utilize what they discover to work well, live well, and be well. And I do that through my practice, which is a therapy and executive coaching practice, and through training others around my methodologies. And the thread across that is self-care. When I was working on my dissertation, it was on African American women moving from welfare to work. And in that dissertation, I gave these self-care workshops. And that was actually my favorite part of the process. And from there, the work has grown and blossomed.
I love that. You said live well, work well, be well. That was hot. That was really, love that. That was a nice bar for sure. Really, really important work that you're doing for sure. Did you have anything you want to double click on?
Not yet. I got some stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna ease y'all in and then I'm going.
Okay. So I love how you mentioned the not becoming the systems that oppress us, or you were just alluding to that just now in your description of your work. But what it stood out to me so vividly when we were chatting in Puerto Rico at the conference, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so powerful. Just even that language alone, not becoming the systems that oppress us, just was like, yes. And I would love to know more about that and how can I even take part in that? How does that intersect with self-care? Like first of all, if I could add a two-parter, how did you even come to that? Like, this is what I do. I help us not operate or become the systems. And then how does that intersect with self-care?
Yeah. So how did it come to be that way? I mean, honestly, I think it is the task that I've been given, the assignment that I've been given. So as to how, I can't really say, but like I can say some of the details. When I was working on my dissertation, one of the things that stood out to me, both in my reading and then my meeting with the folks who graciously allowed me a snapshot into their lives, was that they had been given the message that because you partake in receiving welfare benefits, public assistance. This is many years ago, right? Like that's the language we use, welfare, right? But that folks were told you don't have the right to self-care, right? Like you should be trying to provide for your family, and taking care of yourself is a luxury. And that that was bothersome to me. That how could it be that people who work very hard to raise children, to cultivate those children to survive, how could they as humans not have a right to care for themselves? And so I think that like gave me a spark of understanding, as to there's something systemic. There are messages that say we don't deserve taking care of ourselves. And I think then the other thing that was like pivotal for me, was that my great aunt, my great grandmother, my grandmother, actually, no, not my great grandmother, but my grandmother and my great aunt, both had dementia. And I was very afraid that that would be my fate. And one of the things that I think going down, so at first it was sort of like, what can I do to prevent cognitive decline unnecessarily? And then it became, wait, there are these differences in terms of the rates of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, that are affecting Black folks, different from our white counterparts. And over the years, as the research has become more sophisticated, it's sort of like I knew back then, maybe 15 years ago, I spoke at the Black Women's Health Imperative Conference, and I talked about pleasure and the importance of pleasure as a way to counteract societal issues. And so it became clearer to me that many of the well-being practices that are really helpful to reduce inflammation, to reduce depression, or to prevent depression, are things that we can do to care for ourselves in the face of the challenging circumstances of being Black in the United States, since that is my primary context. And so what I recognize is that it wasn't just about what my great aunt and my grandmother ate. It was that we have clearer and clearer evidence in the research that the environments in which Black folks operate are environments that, through racism, sexism, etc., that those create the conditions or support conditions for us to be ill and not well. And that when we engage in practices like self-care, that can help us to mitigate the impacts of the foolishness that we experience in the world. And so self-care is simply actions that we take on our own behalf towards our well-being. And so that's how I came to that. And I would like to point out that day that we had that conversation in Puerto Rico, we saw each other in the gym while we were on the treadmill. You were doing some serious stuff, and I was doing for play. And but that we were there engaging in self-care and in the morning before we got started. And so my goal is for 1 million Black folks to have as part of their legacy self-care, a part of what we pass on.
Oh, that's a big, what's that, BHAG? Big, hairy, audacious. I love that goal. That is amazing. And if we can support you in that, achieving that goal, please. I hope this conversation is part of that. But yeah, I would love to help you with that.
Yeah, I think for me, like, having been in this field for as long as I have, about 25 years now, I think, I I make it my business to like attack the systems that, even that we're a part of, and kind of I feel like gut them from the inside out.
Yeah.
Because there's this idea that people who get government assistance or require any level of anything that is not deemed um to be the standard. If you're not going out and working a 9 to 5, then something's wrong with you. Right. So I think one of the first things that I had to learn to do was like this rehumanization of the clients that I serve. So nothing is inherently wrong with you. You know, we are all in systems that have been built to kind of oppress. And there has to be a recognition that, these systems are oppressive. Yes, we are in the situation that we're in. This is how we can navigate through it. But even having a colleague, well, I work in the domiciliary for the Department of Veterans Affairs, and having a colleague at one point who came in and was like, I don't understand why they need a gym. Like, these are homeless folks. Why do they need a gym? Like, what would make you think that people who are homeless don't want to take care of themselves? Like, the only thing that they have is like the need to survive somehow. And we're giving them a handout and a hand up, for them to survive. How dare they want to work out and take care of their bodies? And rehumanization and inherent worth is very, very important, I think, in the work that we do. So I really appreciate where you came from, even with your thesis, and just around this work, and being able to really like do the work to tear down systems that are unfair to the people that we serve, and also using those systems and allowing people to get what they need from those systems without feeling like they are somehow unworthy of what it is that they deserve at a basic human level.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, my work for most of my career was in higher education. And before I stepped out of higher education, I ran college counseling centers. And in the two that I led, I had the opportunity to put in place systems and structures for those colleges that didn't previously exist for the Black, Brown, and international students. I worked at a public university, and I felt really like clear that our students should have culturally responsive and elegant care the way folks at private universities experience. And I feel really proud that we were able to do that. And sort of reconfigure the ways that both of those schools move in terms of their outreach efforts and their counseling offerings, and to really see the ways that from the work that the team that I led, the teams that I led, they have grown that work to places that to me are amazing, and because I really, it's clear to me that we have a responsibility to learn from and to pour into folks some of the privileges that those of us who've been in this field, who might have certain access, have, so that folks know what to expect right?
Mhm.
There's a teaching element to it, and there is you are entitled to this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, that is the perfect. I was actually trying to reframe the question that we were going to ask next about in your intro. You have like, what does it mean to take care of yourself? But I believe you already answered that question when we were talking about, the systems and the work that you've done. And so I was like, oh, why even start there? Do you think that we need to teach people, right? Like the importance or the value, or give them permission somehow to take care of themselves? We talk even on this podcast about the privilege we have maybe in our generation to even be thinking about therapy and healing traumas, whereas parents, other elders in our previous generations in our families were likely more in survival mode, right? And we're
Yes.
worried about, if not external factors like racism and like very blatant macro aggressions
Yeah.
and racism outside in the world, it could have also been an income level, like what's around us, making sure the kids have food to eat. So therapy, what? Like who got time for that? Who's paying for it? Da, da, da. And so
Yes.
here we are with our needs met and
Yes.
healthy and happy, talking about y'all need to be in therapy. Is like, wait, what? So if we could maybe, what are your thoughts on, do we feel like we need to even educate the community on like self-care, the value of it,
Yeah.
that
Well,
part of
first, let me tell you. So I have my everything set up for do not disturb, but I got this text. I was like, what? And the text actually is from my mom, because my family can come through when I'm on do not disturb. She won't mind. I'm going to read this.
Okay.
My mom, who is in her 70s, she said, I just had a wonderful gym experience. I walked 3 miles. I used the bike. I went to water aerobics in the pool. And then I went to the whirlpool and sauna. I did it. I didn't think I could do it, but I did it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Like truly, like mom just wrote me that. And I think the thing that I am proud of is that my mom, her sisters, who have told me that they have learned about self-care from me. And they periodically send me messages about things that they are doing to take care of themselves. And so to your question, do we need to teach this? Um, I think yes, right? And I love what you all are saying, not from a deficit perspective, right? Because my mom and my aunts, like many of our moms and aunts, can pray me under the table.
Yes.
Right? Like they know,
Yeah.
one's got her prayer closet.
Yeah.
Like they can pray me under the table. They know about how to ground your spirit and your mind and your soul, right?
Yeah.
And so, um, but when I think about, I read this article once that was referencing some historical information, and that article talked about how during times of enslavement, when Sunday came, or a holiday, and our enslaved ancestors were not working, uh, slave owners would have them plied with liquor, and folks would become drunk and sick, and then associate time off with negativity, right?
Wow.
Associating rest with troubles, and because all kinds of manner of things happen when you drunk, you've had too much, and you begin to associate like that slowing down. And when I read that, I read it in a New York Times article, and I was stunned, I was shocked. And I think about how hard the men and women in my family have worked,
Yeah.
right? The 2 jobs my grandfather had so his daughters and his son could go to Catholic school, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so the working, in addition to the larger culture that is a 24/7 culture, increasingly with technology, uh, we we have taken in sort of programming in our mind and our bodies, much of it, as Resma, and I can never say his last name well, Menachem, who wrote My Grandmother's Hands, talks about, is that we have experiences that are decontextualized. We don't know why our family said, don't do this, don't do that, but we just know we're told not to do it. So slowing down, resting, taking care of yourself, taking care of your body, being able to laud your accomplishments, those things had negative consequences for our families and ancestors. And so I think it is important then to teach people that self-care helps us to take care of our well-being. And I think ideally folks need to have three types of self-care. They need regular self-care, which are our habits. They need restorative self-care, which are the things often we have to plan, like a weekend off, like a vacation, like a massage. And then responsive self-care. That's really like coping strategies where you either pre-cope for something that you're going to have to deal with, that meeting when you know there's always lots of microaggressions in there. What are you going to say when you hear that same foolishness? As well as coping in the moment, taking a few breaths when you are experiencing stress in a situation. I think those three types of self-care are helpful. And I try to teach that to people, that having some combination of that in your life is really important. So yes, I think there are historical and current realities that require us to say to people, we have opportunities to have a say about what our health is, and well-being strategies, self-care is a pathway toward that. That's my long answer.
No, that was well said. So
Yeah.
good. Really good.
Yeah, I really appreciate that too. And hearing the text message from your mom. I think with the work that we do, with this recognition that we have some degree of privilege and having access to therapy and self-care and having the time and the convenience to do those things. Feeling like we're earning enough money and grateful for the resources and all of those things. And I think a part of our social responsibility is I view us as bridge builders, right? We're putting up a roadmap and building a bridge for those who have to come after us. But I also see that bridge as one that kind of goes both ways. So it gives me an opportunity to go in and grab, my elders that came before me, to grab my mom and say, hey, come back this way. You worked your entire life. You retired. And I think a part of the fussing that I do with my mom now is like,
she wants
slow down. Stop taking care of folks. Like, come back. This is what I've learned about self-care. And that your value doesn't have to be in what you expend and what you give to other people and all of that stuff. And getting our folks, I think, to a point to where they're ready to receive that is difficult, but I think is worth it. So one of the things that I pride myself on trying to do is like setting the table. So when I was glancing at your book and I thought I was sneaking and doing it, I was like, is this for me? Should I be reading this? But I'm gonna look anyway.
You can, yes.
One of the things that I saw that was very, very important to me was like in your how to use this book section. And one of the things that it says, and I'm going to read it, it says, it may feel challenging to go against the grain and focus on your needs, but change often involves some discomfort as your brain gets used to new patterns. These emotions aren't a sign that you are doing something wrong. In fact, they will likely show up as you learn new habits that promote your well-being.
Good.
So just kind of setting the table and letting people know, and things that we felt for so long, like rest and taking care of yourself and feeling guilty about those types of things, that I'm sitting here and I should be up being productive. But knowing that rest and all of those things and taking care of myself so I can be my best self is a part of what gives me the energy that I need to go and be my best and do my best and be more productive. And I think, freeing myself, to be able to do that and not feel guilty about being still
Yeah.
And not being up and moving about and just haphazardly doing stuff because I feel like I need to always be moving around. I think that kind of sets the tone and the foundation for the work that we really have to do to be our best selves. So we ain't leaving here early, just
Right.
stressed as hell and all that kind of stuff. So
Right.
I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know you have questions for me, but I always have something to say.
Go for it. Go for it.
Let's go.
Well, first of all, what you read, Scott, I talk more about habit formation and the ways in which our brain deals with habits, creates them, what makes it challenging. In my first book, it's called Better Daily Self-Care Habits.
Mm-hmm.
All my books are pink, right, Soror? They're different shades of pink, but they're pink.
Right.
And but like, I want to say that in here, I've had lots of men read this, and in a lot of ways, my husband is my muse. That man has his self-care practices down.
Wow.
I'm in my office. This side is my office. That side is his workout area. And without fail, 6 days a week, he exercises. And he exercises. He told me he learned early in his career that was the way for him to deal with the stress of the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so like, but these principles are universal. But the thing I really want to say is that I was doing a book club discussion for my first book, and one of my participants told me that she grew up and her family were sharecroppers. And her mother told her every day they were to take a 10-minute like rest, like lie down and rest 10 minutes. And so when she went off to college, she said she took that principle with her. And when things were tough for her in that environment, she would take her 10 minutes. And when she got up, she knew that things would be okay. And so, what that tells me and reminds me of is a few things. One, that our elders and ancestors, the fact that we are here means they had some way of coping.
Yeah, that's real.
And some of those ways aren't adaptive for today.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you don't have time to feel, because if you feel like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like all sorts of things can happen. But I think the thing around that is many of us have been taught to be distant from the traditional healing and coping practices that our people use to help them to be well. Like that tea that they drank when they just were not feeling settled, right? Like, or that way that they prayed, or the ways that they were in community. And so one of the things that I have been spending more time doing is immersing myself in the culture of my ancestors. On my mom's side, we're Gullah Geechee, and on my dad's side, Trinidadian. And so over the last 12 months, I've spent time in both places, in South Carolina, in Trinidad, absorbing culture, and even going to something called the Gullah Geechee Herbal Conference to learn about traditional healing practices. I am not an herbalist, but my husband and I went, and we sat out under the tent and we learned.
Yeah.
And it's been an important practice for me to recenter culture as a way to take care of myself.
I mean, yeah, a light bulb just went off for me. I had an aha moment, a perspective shift, which is one of my favorite things to have. So I'm grateful for it. When you say that it's not that their coping mechanisms were wrong, they've just adapted. Like what works today is probably, or what worked for them back then is probably not, what works today. I appreciate that because I often had this perspective, as I've been in therapy and learning more about myself and what works for me, honestly, which could be another piece of it. Maybe what works for me wouldn't work for one of my family members. But I kind of had thoughts like, well, why didn't we do things this way? Like, if this is a healthier way to deal or cope or be or grow or heal, how come we didn't? And that really, I think, has this shift that, like, there was some sort of coping happening and it helped us to survive all these years. And just because it worked then, anyways, all of that to say, it's somehow I've freed my family or loved ones from this notion of like, maybe we were doing it wrong or we could have been better. Not that I think there's room for growth everywhere, but that's helpful. So I appreciate that. Especially to your point around prayer. So yes, I think if I could just sum it up, I think maybe our primary coping mechanism was the church and that community and prayer. And same, my mom is like the prayer warrior of the family, has been praying for our family every 2 weeks, like leading our family prayer ever since the pandemic or since the top of it in 2020. But she is the, like the minister of the family. And so, yes, like I need to give that credit, like where it's due. I need to give her street credit. I don't, just kind of feel a little bad. Like, oh, I come over here learning my new age, new school stuff. And I'm, anyway, so that was helpful. I appreciate that deeply. And there was another thought I was going to say about that just lost me. But in the meantime, I'm sure it'll come back. In the meantime, can we talk about your favorite 3 activities from this book of 101 of them?
Yeah. Right now, I don't know if I'm going to remember the topic for the title for this, but there's an activity where it's like get an elder or a keeper of family recipes and have them teach you a family recipe and record it. And that's actually based on something that my sister and brother and I have done. So we've had our dad make Trinidadian meals or Caribbean meals, and we've recorded him while making them. So we're learning. We have a record of it, and then in doing so, like he shares stories that he wouldn't otherwise share as we're having that experience together. So that's one of my favorite. I really enjoyed there's one called Create Your Joy playlist. People tell me that they really enjoy that one. So it's like, get your songs that really evoke joyful emotions and create that playlist so that you can hear it over and over and get that feeling of joy. And then there's another one called Prep Your Response. And Prep Your Response is around when you are experiencing situations where there are microaggressions that happen on a frequent or regular basis, have a response or set of responses that you already have practiced that you can say when that thing comes up. And that's actually based on research around how to mitigate the effects of microaggressions. Because in those situations, you often don't like it triggers emotion, and so your prefrontal cortex is not immediately being utilized, and so with practice and awareness you can have those things. So like I generally have in my mind, if I'm in a store that I don't work at and someone says to me, "Do you work here?" I say, "What would give you that impression?" So, and so I know what I'm going to say.
Ooh, I never even thought of that preparation as self-care. But I think that's another thing I appreciate in terms of like how this conversation and even your book has expanded my mind. And my thinking is like so many of these things. I was like, oh, I wouldn't have even considered that self-care, even to the naps, to your point. I think that's what I was going to say earlier. I grew up where my mom's in a house where my mom celebrated naps. She'd be like, guess what we're going to do? We're going to take a nap. And so I'm like, I will I will sleep anywhere. So, and now I'm just now getting to a point where I'm actually seeing and recognizing those naps as restorative and self-care and actually necessary for me to actually, function in my highest self. So I love those activities that you just mentioned. And even some of the ones, like, as I've gone through, like, gosh, I want to go through and actually do as many of these as I possibly can, because they're really good.
I'm gonna tell you one that I was looking at the other day, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but it was like this activity where you're supposed to like combine your friend groups and have everybody like come together. I was like, how, Sway? Because my friend groups have been so resistant to being merged. Like, everybody wants their time just with me, like independent of relationships with other people. And they're like, I don't who
Friend
these new
groups
people?
unite.
Friend groups unite. And I was like, that sounds great in theory, but let me tell you how, I have a couple friends who, we go to NFL game together. And I was trying to merge this one group of friends with the football crew, and the resistance that I received was out of control. But I'm viewing it more now as a challenge to like get it done, because, having a history as a people pleaser, I would just normally be like, okay, well, I'll do college football game with y'all and I'll do NFL. But I deserve to like have everybody love on me in the way that I want to be loved. And like, this is their opportunity to show up for me, because everything ain't about y'all.
Yes, Brother Scott. Yes.
Right. So I really appreciated that one. So it gave me an opportunity to even reframe in that moment, because even the negativity in me was like, I tried that and it didn't work. But the thing about activities is you get a chance to like try things and try them again and try them again, and like giving ourselves permission to like not be folks who are like, okay, I tried this and it didn't work, so I'm never doing it again. But if we're gonna do this work and really be about healing and really be about self-care, it is like doing things in repetition to get stronger at it, to be better at it.
Yeah. And you bring up something really important, because our brain doesn't like change, right? Like, it has a negativity bias. It's trying to keep us safe. I used to have a very regular walking practice, and then I fell off. And my brain, as someone who works at home, is telling me going outside during the day, like, I don't have time for it. That's actually danger, because it's different. And so the thing about creating new habits is that there, for many people, is a discomfort. I experience like a visceral discomfort to doing the new thing, and recognizing that that's just sort of part of the process. I learned this from a friend of mine who said, like, she always tries something 3 times. One time, like, to get the like newness off. The second time to like, now that it's not new, see how it goes. The third time, like, to give it a shot before letting go of it. And I've incorporated that into the book. Like, try it, like, because and clearly, as a Renaissance man, like, you have many facets to you, and so sometimes facets the will come together, sometimes they won't. But I really love what you're saying about like giving it another try, and that you might find out that it's worth it.
I like that. Absolutely. 3 times. I might actually incorporate that to some of my practices too. Okay, last question ish. Last like official conversation question. And then we have some fun ones. Like, biggest lesson you've learned about self-care?
That it's not easy. It comes in cycles and waves, and it's worth keeping at it.
That's good. Good stuff.
Well,
fun stuff.
Let's get to the fun.
All of this has been fun.
It's all fun.
Yeah.
But I think most important, we want to know where can folks find you?
They can find me through my Instagram. I'm at Dr. Cicely Brathwaite. And they can find me on my website, which is cicelybrathwaite.com. And I try to do lots of things periodically. I'm giving talks for organizations that reach out to me that are open to the public. You can find those often on my Instagram, and then through my newsletter that you can access through Instagram too.
I love that. So we will link all of those handles and internet locations in our show notes to make sure that everyone has access to them.
And you have your joy playlist, right? One of the activities. So that leads us into our next thing.
Perfect segue.
Which is we do a segment called Music for the Moment. And it is always kind of about what this conversation feels like to you. So we want you to choose a song that kind of embodies today's conversation. We, of course, will add it to our playlist on Spotify. But what does this moment feel like to you?
Oh, you know what it feels like?
What?
That song Joy, that I think the version is by Pharrell's Voices of Fire.
Yeah.
Joy. Yes, I like that.
Which was an enjoyable Netflix series to watch during.
It was so good. It was so good. Yeah.
So I think that's what this conversation. This has been a joy. This is a joy.
I love that. We're adding it. What's your song?
You don't want to go?
I will absolutely go. So Toni Jones, have you heard her take up space? All of that? I felt like Energy Budget was like perfect for this conversation. Just that whole I See Me Mantras album, I tell you, every time I listen to it, I'm like, girl, pass the collection plate. But Energy Budget is the one for this conversation specifically. And I was like, yeah, that's perfect.
Oh, I love that.
So mine is Black Woman by Rhapsody. I love Rhapsody. And it is really just like an ode to Black women. She shouts out several of like the historical figures in rap as it relates to Black women. And even this conversation, when Shatay and I were kind of discussing before this, like what my ideas were about, questions that I had to ask and that kind of thing, and how it relates to the work that I do with men. And I was just like, I don't want to relate it to that. Even though I realize this is a human thing, I recognize also that, spaces that are for Black women are for Black women. And I want to show up in a way that offers support and helps me learn how to love the women that are in my life more, rather than being able to be like, oh, that's also good for men. Like, I don't want to show up in Black women's spaces and all lives matter. That space, right?
Don't do it.
I want to come in that space and say, how can I support? How can I protect? How can I make sure that Black women that I care about get what they need and feel, supported and protected by me? So Black Woman by Rhapsody.
I will say though, Dr. Cicely already said that these are universal.
Yes,
so.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this has been amazing, Dr. Cicely. We thank you so much for having us or for joining us. The conversation has been really fruitful for me, even just like opening my mind to thinking differently about some opinions I had in the past. So I think that is a huge win. And I'm going to close this on out. If you made it to this part of the conversation, then you obviously like what you hear. And you can continue to support in one of three ways. You can like, follow, rate, subscribe, do all the things here. Share this episode with a family member or friend who needs a safe space to start their healing journey. You can attend any one of our events. I think you have a man-to-man coming up soon. And a portion of the proceeds that we raise goes towards our therapy fund for Black adults. Or you could third way, rep your healing through our affirmative merch that we have on our website. We have a number of them: God in Therapy, Hustle, Hip Hop Healing. And again, the portion of those proceeds go towards our therapy fund for adults. And like we always say, let's make the choice to heal ourselves first, because when we do, we change our lives and we lead the way for those around us to save themselves too.
And more than any of that, is just to realize that you're not alone. So join us. We're going to take this journey together. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Dr. Cicely.